There's something deeply unsettling about realizing that the person who says I love you might not mean it at all. He looks you in the eyes. He says all the right words. He does all the little things that make your heart melt. But deep down, something doesn't add up. You feel it in your gut. A quiet tension. A strange inconsistency between his words and his actions. It's almost like his affection has a script, and he's just performing it. The truth is, some men don't love the woman they're with. They love the way she makes them feel. They love the comfort, the validation, the ego boost. And when that fades, so does the illusion of love. What's worse is that they often don't even realize they're doing it. They'll say they care, they'll promise to change, and they'll keep you emotionally hooked just enough to make you stay. But behind that performance, there's emotional detachment. There's calculation. There's the quiet, self-centered love that feeds on your affection without giving any real depth back. That's why today we're going to go deeper, far beyond the surface gestures or sweet words, and uncover 5 clear signs that a man is pretending to love you. And more importantly, we'll explore the psychology behind each one, so you can see through the act before it breaks you completely. Because love, real love, doesn't confuse you. It doesn't make you anxious or constantly second-guess yourself. When someone truly loves you, their consistency speaks louder than their promises. Their actions align with their words, even when no one's watching. But when a man is faking it, you'll start to notice a different pattern. Subtle at first, but impossible to ignore once you know what to look for. Maybe you've already been in this kind of situation. Maybe you've felt that emotional distance even while sitting next to him. The way he seems there but not really there. The way he's affectionate one day, cold the next. The way you start questioning your own perception, wondering if you're imagining things. That's not love. That's emotional inconsistency. And inconsistency is one of the clearest reflections of a man who's not emotionally invested, but doesn't want to lose the comfort of having you around. What you need to understand is that many men learn how to mimic love, not out of pure malice, but out of emotional immaturity. They repeat patterns they've seen growing up. They chase connection, but fear vulnerability. They want control, not closeness. They crave admiration, not intimacy. So instead of building a real bond, they create a facade, something that looks like love, but lacks its substance. And that's why so many women end up trapped in emotionally draining relationships. They're not with bad men necessarily. They're with men who never learned how to love beyond themselves. Men who want affection without accountability, attention without effort. And when that happens, they don't show their lack of love by being cruel or distant all the time. No, sometimes they hide it behind grand gestures, fake promises, and moments of temporary warmth that keep you believing things are still okay. But today, you'll learn how to decode that behavior. Because once you understand the emotional patterns behind a man who's pretending, you'll stop chasing mixed signals and start seeing reality with clarity. You'll recognize the difference between a man who truly cares and one who only loves the reflection of himself he sees in your eyes. So let's begin. Because once you can identify these 5 psychological signs of fake love, you'll never fall for emotional manipulation again. And most importantly, you'll know how to protect your peace, your energy, and your heart from men who only know how to perform love, not live it. Let's imagine a situation, one that many women find themselves in, without even realizing it. You meet a man who seems perfect at first. He's charming, attentive, and knows exactly what to say to make you feel special. In the beginning, everything flows so easily. He texts you, "Good morning," before you even wake up. He listens to your stories, remembers small details, and tells you he's never met anyone like you before. You start to believe that maybe, finally, this is someone who understands you. But slowly, very slowly, things begin to shift. He doesn't text as often. He takes longer to reply. When you ask if something's wrong, he says he's just busy, tired, or stressed. Yet you notice he still has time for everything else. His friends, his phone, social media. It's subtle, but it hurts. You start to feel that his presence is there, but his emotional connection isn't. Then comes the confusion. He still calls you baby. He still says, "I love you." But those words start to feel empty. There's no warmth behind them. You sense that his affection has become a routine, something he does out of habit, not passion. You try to talk about it, to bring up what you're feeling, but he gets defensive. He says you're overthinking, or being too sensitive. And so you start doubting yourself instead of the situation. That's exactly how fake love keeps you trapped. It manipulates your empathy. A man who's pretending doesn't need to lie outright. He just gives you enough truth to make you stay. He'll give you attention in small doses like emotional breadcrumbs, just enough to stop you from walking away. One day he's warm, affectionate, and deeply engaged. The next day he's distant, distracted, and unavailable. This emotional inconsistency creates a psychological loop, a reward and withdrawal cycle that confuses your brain and makes you crave his validation even more. In psychology, this is known as intermittent reinforcement, a powerful emotional conditioning mechanism. When someone gives you affection unpredictably, your mind starts associating love with uncertainty. You begin to mistake anxiety for passion and confusion for connection. You start believing that if you just try harder, communicate better, love deeper, he'll go back to the man he was in the beginning. But that man was never fully real. He was a projection, a version of himself designed to win you over, not to build something lasting. The hardest part is that fake love often feels more intense than real love, because it's filled with highs and lows, with drama and emotional tension. Those moments of coldness make you chase the warmth again. Every small gesture of affection feels amplified, like proof that maybe he does care. But that cycle is what keeps you emotionally addicted. It feeds your hope while draining your peace. Now think about this pattern. When you express your needs, how does he react? Does he listen with empathy, or does he turn it around and make you feel guilty for bringing it up? A man who's pretending to love you can't handle emotional responsibility. He doesn't want to look at your feelings because that would force him to confront his own emptiness. So instead he avoids the conversation. He minimizes your emotions, deflects accountability, and subtly shifts the blame back onto you. This is why so many women stay stuck. They keep hoping for emotional growth from someone who's emotionally stagnant. They keep forgiving patterns that never change. And they confuse temporary affection with genuine love, because deep down, they're holding on to the version of him that only existed in the beginning. If you've ever felt like you're constantly doing too much to keep a man interested while he's doing the bare minimum, that's your first red flag. Real love doesn't make you beg for reciprocity. It's not a reward you earn. It's a connection that grows naturally through mutual effort. When one person is pretending, the energy flow becomes one-sided. You give, he takes. You invest, he withdraws. You open up, he hides. And yet, the most painful part is that sometimes he's not consciously trying to deceive you. He might truly believe that he loves you, but his version of love is shallow. It's a reflection of his emotional limitations, not your worth. That's why understanding the psychological patterns behind this kind of behavior is so important. It helps you detach emotionally, not by becoming cold or bitter, but by seeing the truth for what it is, without illusion. Because once you see clearly, you stop chasing potential. You stop accepting mixed signals as proof of affection. And most importantly, you stop confusing attention with love. And that's where the real transformation begins. When you realize that you don't need someone to say, "I love you," every day to feel secure. You need someone whose actions make those words unnecessary. Now let's break down the 5 psychological signs that reveal when a man is pretending to love you. These signs are not about what he says. They're about how he behaves when no one is watching, and how he makes you feel over time. Because real love creates peace. Fake love creates confusion. First sign: his affection feels conditional. At first, he's all in, affectionate, caring, constantly expressing how much you mean to him. But over time, you notice something strange. His warmth only appears when things go his way. When you agree with him, when you make him feel admired, or when you give him what he wants, he becomes the perfect partner again. But the moment you express a boundary, a disagreement, or an emotional need, his tone changes. He becomes distant, cold, or even irritated. That's not love. That's conditional approval. It means his affection depends on your compliance. Psychologically, this behavior is rooted in control, not connection. He loves you as long as you fit the version of you that benefits him. But the moment you act independently, his emotional investment disappears. Real love, by contrast, survives discomfort. It doesn't vanish when you stop pleasing the other person. When a man truly loves you, he's capable of emotional repair, of coming back to the table, talking things through, and wanting to understand your side. But when he's pretending, he doesn't want understanding. He wants obedience. That's why so many women feel like they're walking on eggshells around a man who supposedly loves them. His affection is a tool, not a gift. Second sign: his words are loud, but his consistency is silent. A man who's pretending to love you will often use words as emotional camouflage. He'll say all the right things. I've never felt this way before. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I can't imagine my life without you. But his actions don't match the emotional weight of those words. He promises to be there, but disappears when you need him most. He says he'll change, but repeats the same patterns. He tells you you're important, but treats your feelings like they're optional. This inconsistency creates emotional instability in you. You start waiting for the next good version of him to show up, because his words gave you hope, even though his behavior keeps taking it away. Psychologically, this is known as cognitive dissonance. When your heart and mind receive conflicting information, your heart clings to his promises, but your mind knows the reality doesn't match. Over time, this tension wears down your self-trust. You stop believing your own intuition, and you start believing his explanations instead. But if love requires you to constantly question your own perception, it's not love. It's manipulation disguised as affection. Third sign, emotional intimacy never deepens. This is one of the most revealing signs, and it's the one most women ignore, because it doesn't always look negative. On the surface, he might seem open, charming, even vulnerable at times. He might share stories about his past, talk about his struggles, or let you in emotionally just enough to make you feel close. But when you try to go deeper, when you try to understand what he truly feels, what he fears, or what he wants for the future, he shuts down. He changes the subject, avoids eye contact, or uses humor to deflect. It's as if he's comfortable being seen, but not truly known. That's because fake love thrives on emotional performance, not emotional presence. He wants the illusion of closeness without the real risk of intimacy. Vulnerability requires honesty, accountability, and a willingness to be emotionally exposed, all things that make a pretender uncomfortable. So he stays in the shallow end of the emotional pool, where everything feels romantic, but nothing ever grows. Real love deepens with time. Fake love repeats itself. The same gestures, the same words, the same cycles. If your relationship feels stuck in an endless loop of emotional déjà vu, where everything looks good but nothing evolves, you're not in love, you're in repetition. Fourth sign, he avoids accountability and turns blame into defense. One of the strongest indicators of fake love is how he reacts when he hurts you. A man who truly loves you feels discomfort when he knows he's caused you pain. Even if he doesn't handle it perfectly, he tries to make it right. But a man who's pretending, he turns your pain into an accusation. If you say, "That hurt me," he says, "You're too sensitive." If you ask, "Why did you ignore me?" he says, "You're always overreacting." Every conversation that should bring you closer turns into a battlefield of deflection. This reaction isn't random. Psychologically, it's a defense mechanism called projection, when someone denies their own flaws by attributing them to someone else. Instead of confronting his own emotional shortcomings, he blames you for feeling them. The result is emotional gaslighting. He confuses your perception until you start apologizing for being hurt. In healthy love, mistakes become opportunities for growth. In fake love, mistakes become weapons to silence you. Fifth sign, you feel emotionally lonely even when he's right beside you. This is the most painful one, and the hardest to admit. You're with him physically, but emotionally you feel invisible. Conversations lack depth. Affection feels mechanical. He's present, but not connected. You start to realize that you share a bed, a routine, maybe even a future, but not a real emotional bond. That loneliness in connection is the final proof of pretense. Because when someone truly loves you, their presence brings calmness. You feel seen, heard, and emotionally safe. But when someone is pretending, their presence brings confusion. You feel like you're constantly trying to earn attention, constantly trying to guess what version of him you'll get today. Psychologically, this happens because fake love is transactional. It's not based on emotional reciprocity, it's based on convenience. He stays for comfort, attention, or validation, but not because of genuine attachment. And no matter how much affection you give, it never fills the void, because the relationship isn't built on shared growth. It's built on imbalance. When you look at all 5 of these signs together, conditional affection, inconsistency between words and actions, lack of emotional depth, avoidance of accountability, and emotional loneliness, you'll start to see the pattern clearly. He's not loving you. He's maintaining access to you. That's the harsh truth many people don't want to face. Pretending to love someone is often less about deception and more about fear. Fear of being alone, fear of losing comfort, fear of vulnerability. But no amount of fear can justify emotional dishonesty. Once you learn to recognize these psychological patterns, you stop personalizing someone else's emotional immaturity. You stop thinking, "I'm not enough," and start seeing the truth. Some men aren't ready to love. They're only ready to receive love. When you stay with someone who's pretending to love you, the damage doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly, slowly, beneath the surface. It doesn't explode. It erodes. Bit by bit, it eats away at your confidence, your emotional security, and your ability to trust yourself. At first, you think you can handle it. You tell yourself it's just a phase, that he's stressed, that all relationships have ups and downs. You start justifying behaviors you would never tolerate from anyone else. You start minimizing your own pain, convincing yourself that maybe you're asking for too much. That's how emotional detachment grows, through small compromises that accumulate over time. The truth is, fake love doesn't just waste your time, it rewires your self-perception. It teaches you to settle for emotional crumbs, to silence your intuition, and to mistake inconsistency for depth. You begin to think love should feel uncertain, that you have to earn attention or prove your worth. But that's not love, that's conditioning. It's what happens when someone manipulates your empathy long enough for you to forget your own emotional baseline. And the longer you stay in that space, the harder it becomes to recognize yourself. You start seeing your value through his reactions instead of your reality. You find yourself constantly seeking reassurance, waiting for validation that never fully comes. Even when you're together, you feel like you're standing in the shadow of his approval, invisible unless he decides to notice you. Psychologically, this dynamic creates a state called learned helplessness. It's when you've been invalidated so many times that your mind stops believing your feelings matter. You stop speaking up because every time you did, it ended in blame or silence. You stop expecting change because deep down, you've accepted emotional instability as the normal rhythm of love. That's how emotional dependence forms. Not because you're weak, but because your brain was trained to link pain and love in the same sentence. But here's what's even more dangerous. Staying in a relationship like this doesn't just hurt your heart. It reshapes your identity. You start losing the parts of yourself that once made you vibrant. You stop laughing as freely. You stop dreaming as boldly. You start measuring your emotions, censoring your honesty, and living in emotional survival mode. The relationship becomes less about connection and more about avoidance. Avoiding conflict, rejection, abandonment. And the man who's pretending to love you, he benefits from that silence. Because as long as you're trying to fix things, he doesn't have to change. As long as you're analyzing his behavior, he doesn't have to take accountability. He keeps the illusion alive just enough to keep you emotionally invested, but never enough to give you true peace. It's important to understand, people who fake love are not always villains. Some of them genuinely believe they're trying. But intention doesn't erase impact. The emotional cost of being loved half-heartedly is still the same. It drains your joy, your trust, and your ability to receive real love when it finally appears. Because after so much inconsistency, genuine affection starts to feel foreign. You don't recognize safety anymore. You only recognize intensity. That's why awareness is so powerful. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you understand that inconsistency is not passion, and that confusion is not connection, you start reclaiming your clarity. You begin to separate your worth from his validation. You begin to rebuild your emotional boundaries, not as walls to keep people out, but as filters to keep manipulation away. The urgency here is not to rush out of every imperfect relationship, but to stop normalizing emotional neglect, to stop confusing tolerance with loyalty, to stop calling anxiety chemistry. Because love that hurts more than it heals is not love. It's emotional dependency dressed as devotion. The psychological consequence of staying in fake love is profound. It makes you forget what genuine reciprocity feels like. And when that happens, even a toxic connection can start to feel like home. That's why so many women stay. Not because they don't see the truth, but because the truth has become too painful to face. But the cost of denial is always higher than the cost of truth. Every time you choose to stay silent, you lose a piece of yourself. Every time you explain away disrespect, you reinforce the idea that your needs are negotiable. Every time you settle for almost love, you teach your heart that almost is enough. It's not. You deserve emotional security, not confusion. You deserve honesty, not excuses. You deserve a love that calms your nervous system, not one that constantly keeps you on edge. The moment you stop chasing emotional validation and start demanding emotional alignment, everything changes. You shift from being someone's option to being your own priority. That's what awareness does, and it reawakens your sense of power. Because once you realize that a man pretending to love you can't actually break you, only distract you, you stop giving him that power. And from that moment on, everything begins to heal. At some point, you have to stop asking whether he really loves you and start asking whether this version of love is enough for you. Because real love doesn't keep you guessing. It doesn't drain you. It doesn't make you constantly fight for emotional clarity. Real love expands you. Fake love shrinks you. When a man truly loves you, you'll feel it in the consistency of his actions, not in the intensity of his words. You'll notice that even in conflict, there's respect. Even in silence, there's safety. Even in distance, there's reassurance. Because love built on authenticity doesn't require constant proof. It simply exists, steadily, through the calm and the chaos. But when a man is pretending to love you, everything feels conditional. You feel like you have to perform for affection, like every step forward depends on your ability to keep him satisfied. And no matter what you give, it never seems to be enough. That's because fake love feeds on imbalance. It survives only as long as you're the one carrying the emotional weight. Here's the truth most people avoid. Walking away from fake love isn't the end of something real. It's the beginning of something honest. It's the moment you stop negotiating your worth and start reclaiming your emotional peace. It's the day you stop chasing potential and start demanding presence. The psychology of love is simple but hard to accept. People can only meet you at the depth they've met themselves. If a man hasn't faced his own fears, insecurities, and emotional limitations, he can't give you the kind of love that heals. He can only offer you the kind of love that repeats. The same patterns, the same excuses, the same unfinished emotional lessons. But once you understand this, you stop taking it personally. You stop trying to fix him. You stop trying to earn the love he's not capable of giving. Because you finally understand, it's not your job to teach someone how to love you. It's your job to love yourself enough to stop settling for almost. That's the shift. The moment you stop accepting inconsistency as normal, you create space for something real. It doesn't happen overnight. Healing never does. But it starts the moment you choose clarity over confusion. Because when you remove what's fake, you make room for what's true. And the truth is, genuine love doesn't require guessing games. It doesn't manipulate your emotions to keep you close. It doesn't use silence as punishment or affection as leverage. Real love is emotionally fluent. It communicates, listens, adjusts, and grows. It doesn't leave you wondering. It leaves you grounded. So if you're watching this and something inside you recognizes these signs, that quiet voice that says this feels too familiar, don't ignore it. That's your intuition trying to protect you. It's your emotional intelligence waking up. Listen to it. You don't have to justify emotional inconsistency anymore. You don't have to explain why someone treats you like an option while calling you a priority. You just have to decide that your peace matters more than his presence. Because the real test of love isn't how much someone says they care. It's how much peace they bring into your life. And if his love costs your peace, it's too expensive. Remember this, love that's real doesn't need to be chased. It stays, it shows up, it grows, and it never makes you question your worth. So take this as your moment of clarity, the moment you choose yourself, the moment you stop mistaking confusion for connection, and start protecting your emotional energy like it's sacred, because it is. You don't need to prove your value to anyone. You don't need to fight to be seen. You don't need to hold on to something that keeps hurting. You just need to trust that the version of love that doesn't require pretending still exists. And it begins the moment you refuse to accept anything less.